Let me begin by saying that my objective in sharing this occurrence is to assist you with your investigation. My death occurred under strange circumstances, and I'm ashamed of how it occurred. The facts I've presented here are just as exact and obvious to me today as they were back in May, many years ago, when I died and returned. I've only told this story to a few people I thought knew me well enough not to believe I was insane. I'm not sure if the following fact is relevant to the NDE I had when I was 15, but I think it's worth mentioning. This wasn't my first time dying. The physicians warned my mother during my birth that the umbilical cord had wrapped itself around my neck and that she would have to give birth to a stillborn baby. Because I had no vital signs, the typical mixture of elation and victory that a mother ordinarily feels did not precede my birth. My stillbirth was simply the culmination of an inescapable tragedy, complete with the predicted agony and grief that a family would have to endure. Despite the doctor's prognosis of death, I began kicking and screaming once the cord was severed from my throat. I have no NDE experience recall of this death. All I have are reports from my family of what it was like, their anguish, and then their delight at being able to bring their son home instead of preparing a baby for burial. I'm including this experience because I want to be as accurate as possible in case it has any bearing on my NDE. I'd also like to point out that, even today, I've only read about one other NDE experience from Anita Moorjani's book, Dying to Be Me, so I'm not well versed in the different types of NDE experiences people have had. At the time of my NDE, I had never heard of an NDE or an out-of-body experience. These concepts were utterly unfamiliar to me, and I didn't really comprehend what I'd gone through until much later in life. The event I'm about to share did not correspond with any understandings I had at the time. The event itself exceeded anything I could have imagined or anticipated. When I was 15, my mother was dying of cancer in a hospital bed, having been told there was no possibility of recovery. She'd been taking chemo and radiation treatments for 2 years. Her impending death had been withheld from me up to this point. My family wanted to shield me from the truth because I'm the youngest of 4 brothers. They notified me when there was no longer any hope, and I was crushed. 3 of my friends organized for a weekend trip in a cabin up in the hills, hours outside of civilization, to help me get my mind off of my problems and grief. My guy had brought some moderate drugs with him, hashish and marijuana. These narcotics were swiftly consumed, leaving my pals to look for additional ways to help me escape reality. At the time, inhaling gasoline fumes had grown fashionable in my province since it was the cheapest high accessible. We didn't realize the risks or how many children had died as a result of attempting this incredibly risky kind of self-intoxication. Inhaling gasoline fumes deprives the brain of oxygen, causing the sufferer to die of asphyxiation. It is supposed to feel similar to drowning. My pals and I took turns passing around the gas can, and I was the last one to go. I put the funnel from the can in my mouth and inhaled deeply several times. This is where one universe ends and another begins. I passed out while still holding the funnel in my mouth and went on a little trip. I looked down at a room. Boys are laughing and conversing in the room. I observe that one of the boys is silent and motionless. He's hunched over a gas can and not moving. I can hear the other males talking, but it seems like it's coming through water, like when you're playing in a swimming pool with your friends. My focus keeps returning to the boy who isn't moving. Even though I don't know this youngster, his condition is quite evident to me, and I find it terribly disturbing and agitating. I'm speaking to someone standing just over my left shoulder about my concerns regarding this boy. I know who I'm talking to, and the level of intimacy between us is comparable to discussing your sentiments with your best friend. I'm yelling and ranting about this boy's situation in our one-sided dialogue, and I'm not worried about the consequences. I was raised to respect authority figures, therefore swearing in front of my parents or any other adult was something I'd never done or would ever do. I kept asking this individual behind me, "What is he doing? Why doesn't he realize he's killing himself? Is he unaware that he's dying? Why is he squandering his life?" I'm becoming increasingly enraged at this youngster who's dying right in front of my eyes. I can't even begin to express how frustrated and angry I am at this boy's recklessness. I continue to query whoever or whatever is standing behind me, but I get no answers regarding this child. At the same time, I don't expect this person to respond to my questions. I understand that these answers can only be obtained through revelation. My rage reaches a boiling point after what seems like an eternity of me continuously questioning why this youngster is wasting his life. That's when the realization dawns. I cry out these words. Oh God, that's me. As soon as I realized what was going on, the landscape below me faded away, almost as if curtains were drawn across it. It faded away like seeing a soap bubble go quickly into the distance, carried away by the wind. This is where things truly start to change. I could sense my own presence, yet was not physically present. At the time, I described it to myself as pure thoughts. But this did not strike me as unusual. None of my feelings seemed out of place or unexpected. I wasn't terrified or happy. Everything was clear to me and made great sense. It was like having a nighttime dream in which you're suddenly living on the moon, and your dog has transformed into a dragon, and you don't question these things because they are as they are. The thing that struck me the most was that I could sense the presence of an infinite number of other minds. When I think about this, I get the word infinity in my head. I was then drawn into alignment with these other brains by a pull. It felt as if we were all connected in a never-ending chain. The next thing I noticed was a sense of movement. It felt like I was on a train, moving forward and slightly backward at the same time. It felt like I was ebbing away. I'm not sure if I was truly moving or if there was really a destination, because this is where my NDE ended and I returned back to life. The following is what I felt as I returned to my body. I have no recollection of the first half of the journey back. These details were filled in for me by a friend. They had no issue doing so because I had irritated them greatly. As my attention returned to the room, I heard angry shouts and threats along with my name. In no particular order, here is what I experienced. First, I became aware of a sound which gradually grows, much like turning up the volume on a stereo. The sound becomes louder and begins to divide into various noises. I'm hearing voices, angry voices. Then 2 light pinholes enter my eyes, and the room gradually expands from a pinhole perspective to a complete vision. It appears to have been minutes, although it could have been seconds. I can only describe it as a switched-on sensation. I then became conscious of my body. I find myself standing in the middle of the room, and the gas can has fallen to the floor. Now I'll explain why my pals were so irritated. They informed me that I had abruptly stood up and began spitting everywhere, on them and throughout the room. They yelled at me to stop, but I didn't seem to hear them and started spitting in all directions. Finally, I paused. I know now that I stopped when I was able to taste again. I was looking for a way to feel alive again. For a while, all of the things that allow us to know we're physically alive had vanished from my awareness. I purposefully sought out to recall each physical sensation. Unfortunately, for my buddies, the first thing I needed to experience was taste. That's my narrative. Perhaps it can help with another puzzle piece.